Talking about the Chicago Fair Workweek Ordinance, and joining us with important details is attorney Brian Weinthal with Burke Warren. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Let's start, Brian, with who is eligible for these added protections.
The statute covers employers working in the city who have more than 100 employees globally and who work or produce work in 7 sectors: healthcare, hotels, building services, manufacturing, warehouses, retail, and restaurants. Although I'll note that in the case of restaurants, employers have to have more than 30 locations and more than 250 employees globally to be within reach of the statute. On the employee side, employees who work for one of those covered employers I mentioned and who make less than $26 an hour or less than $50,000 a year are eligible for the statute's protections.
So what is this ordinance basically designed to do? What is the goal here?
Well, the new Fair Workweek Ordinance is really the city's effort to create some predictability for employees with regard to paychecks, daycare, and ultimately the ability to hold down a second job. The law requires certain employers to notify certain employees 10 days in advance of their schedules, which increases to 14 days in 2022. If employers don't notify employees within that window, or if they make changes, the employer owes the employee an hour of predictability pay at the regular wage rate. But here's the bigger news. If an employer changes, alters, or cancels a schedule 24 hours before a planned shift, the employer owes the employee half of what that employee would have made for working that shift. And I'll note that those penalties are in addition to any fines that could be assessed by the city for violating the ordinance of up to $300 to $500 a shot.
All right, let me ask you this. We're in a pandemic. A lot of folks are out of work. A lot of people who kept their jobs are fearful if they complain about something on the job, they could get a pink slip. So how should people handle a violation of this ordinance?
Well, the ordinance contains an anti-retaliation provision, and candidly, there are many other employment laws that would protect an employee for asserting a violation. So realistically, employees should have little concern about alleging these violations. And of course, because of that, employers should be very focused on making sure that they comply with the new law.
Are there penalties if they don't comply?
There are. So as I mentioned, if the employer doesn't provide the necessary notice in advance, they owe the employee an hour of predictability pay if they don't meet that 10-day window. At the same time, they can have fines assessed against them by the city for violating the ordinance of $300 to $500 apiece. Now, let me add that we haven't heard much about this statute until now. And that's because when it came into effect on July 1st of 2020, the city put a 6-month moratorium on enforcement of the new law. That was because of COVID-19, and as you mentioned, because most employers were either closed or struggling to survive. But as of a few days from now, as of January 1st of 2021, that 6-month safe harbor ends, and employees now will be allowed to allege both violations with the city through grievances and private lawsuits as well if they believe they've been affected or aggrieved under the new law.
All right, very interesting information, important information. Brian Weinthal with Burke Warren. Thank you, sir, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year to both of you.
To you too.